She was a 7-year-old golden retriever named Hazel. The owner, a woman in her early 60s, had driven 90 minutes to see me because 2 other vets had told her Hazel was just aging. She sat across from my exam table, hands folded, and asked me one thing: "Does she still know who I am?" Hazel had been showing what looked like cognitive decline, slower to respond, slower to come when called, wandered the house at night. The owner had been traveling for work, 3, 4 weeks at a stretch, and every time she came home, she'd watch Hazel for some sign of recognition, some flash of the dog she raised, and she wasn't sure anymore if it was still there. I ran blood work. I did a neurological screen. And while we waited for results, I asked her something I always ask in those moments. "Tell me what happens the exact second you walk through the door." She thought about it. "She lifts her head," she said, "before I even open it. And then she does this thing with her whole body." I told her to stop right there. Because that was the answer. Not in the blood work, not in the neurological screen. In that moment, at the door. Your dog's memory is not broken the way you fear it is. What I've learned over 22 years of practice, and what science has only recently started to confirm, is that the way dogs remember is so different from how we remember, so much more layered and more loyal, that most owners have no idea what's actually happening inside their dog's brain every single day. What your dog holds on to about you, how long they hold it, and how deep it goes. By the time this is done, you are going to understand exactly what your dog remembers about you, and the answer is going to change the way you see your relationship with them. I need to explain something first because most people think about dog memory the wrong way. We assume dogs experience time the way we do, that they sit there watching the clock, aware of how long we've been gone, consciously waiting. That's not what's happening. And once you understand what is happening, it's actually far more extraordinary. Think of your own memory as a filing cabinet. You open a drawer, pull out a specific folder, last Tuesday's lunch, and you can flip through it. Date, time, what you ate, who was there. That kind of memory, recalling a specific event from a specific point in the past, is what scientists call episodic memory. For a long time, the assumption was that only humans had it, that animals lived almost entirely in the present, that your dog couldn't truly remember you, not the way you remember them. That assumption has been cracking apart for about a decade, and the cracks are significant. Here's where it gets interesting. Researchers at Budapest's Family Dog Project, one of the most serious dog cognition labs in the world, developed something called the Do As I Do test. The idea is this. They trained dogs to watch a human perform an action, then repeat it. Simple enough. But then they added a twist. They had the dogs do something else first, a distracting task, and then asked the dogs to recall and repeat the original action, without being cued, without being reminded. The dogs did it. They held the memory of what they'd seen, set it aside, and retrieved it later. That is not just instinct. That is not just conditioning. That is memory operating the way memory is supposed to operate. Storing, holding, recalling. The scientists called it episodic-like memory, not identical to human episodic memory, but functionally similar. Your dog is not just reacting to the present moment, something in there is filing things away. But here's the part that matters to you specifically. Because if episodic memory is the filing cabinet, scent memory is something else entirely. Scent memory in dogs operates through a completely different system, one that's directly wired into the parts of the brain that process emotion and bonding. Think of it this way. Your smell is not just a smell to your dog. It's a file that contains you. Everything associated with you, your presence, your safety, your routine, your voice, gets cross-indexed under your scent, and dogs do not forget smells the way they forget visual cues. Scent memory in dogs is long. Researchers have documented recognition responses in dogs that hadn't encountered a person's scent in over 2 years. 2 years. And the dog still knew. I've spent 22 years inside animals. I've held them when they were dying. I've watched owners say goodbye in my exam room more times than I can count. And the thing that stays with me, the thing I keep turning over, is how many owners leave those rooms believing their dog didn't know them anymore, believing the recognition was gone. I've become convinced, the longer I do this, that they were wrong far more often than they knew. The science is starting to catch up with what I've seen, and I think that matters. So let's talk about what your dog actually remembers. Because this isn't abstract. This has implications for how you live with your dog right now. The first thing I want you to understand is that your dog remembers your smell more durably than almost anything else about you. I know that sounds clinical. Stay with me. There is a structure in the dog's brain called the olfactory bulb, the smell processing center, and it is, proportionally, about 40 times larger than the equivalent structure in your brain. 40 times. When you walk into a room, you see it. Your dog smells it. Every person who's been in it, every emotion those people were carrying, every time of day, layered on top of each other like geological strata. When they smell you, they're not just detecting your presence, they're reconstructing you. A study published in the journal Learning and Behavior used fMRI brain scans on awake, unrestrained dogs, something that's technically remarkable on its own, and looked at which scent triggered the strongest response in the brain's reward center. Not the dog's own scent, not a familiar dog's scent, not a stranger's scent. Your scent. The scent of their owner produced the strongest activation of the caudate nucleus. That's the part of the brain associated with positive anticipation, with reward, with love, of any smell tested. Your dog's brain lights up for you, specifically, by name, essentially, because your name to them is your smell. Have you ever noticed your dog sniff your shoes or your coat when you first get home? That's not random. They're reading a detailed report, where you've been, who you were near, what kind of day it was, and when they lift their head before you even open the door, the way Hazel did, that's the scent recognition system firing before your hand is even on the knob. Now what about time? This is the question that keeps owners up at night. If I'm gone for a week, does my dog think I'm never coming back? If I'm gone for a month, does she still know who I am when I return? Here is what the research actually says, and it's more nuanced than the internet will tell you. Alexandra Horowitz, one of the leading dog cognition researchers in the world, based at Columbia University, has written extensively on how dogs experience duration. Dogs almost certainly do not experience time the way we do. They don't check a mental clock. But they are acutely sensitive to biological rhythms. Yours. Your dog learns your schedule, the time you wake up, the time you usually get home. They track these rhythms through scent changes in the environment and through their own internal circadian cycles. When those rhythms are disrupted, when you're gone longer than expected, they feel it. But the memory of you doesn't evaporate. The scent file doesn't close. There was a case in my clinic. A border collie named Miles, about 4 years old. His owner, a contractor, had been deployed overseas for 8 months. 8 months. When he came home, Miles reacted within seconds of the front door opening. Not cautious sniffing, not the slow warm-up you'd see with a stranger. Immediate, tail, whole body, vocalizing. 8 months of separation, and the recognition was instant. The file was intact. Dogs grieve real absences. That's documented. But grieving is not forgetting. And the distinction matters enormously. There's another layer to this that I find remarkable, and I want to make sure I tell you about it before we're done. Dogs remember your emotional state, not just your presence, your emotional presence. This is where the Budapest work intersects with something called emotional contagion research. Dogs are extraordinarily sensitive to human cortisol, the stress hormone. They can detect it in your sweat, in your breath. Studies have shown that when your cortisol level spikes, your dog's cortisol level often rises in response. They're not just observing that you're upset. They're chemically synchronized with you, and they remember the patterns. A dog who lives with someone who frequently experiences anxiety will develop associated behavioral signatures: watchfulness, hypervigilance, staying close. They're not just reacting. They've built a model of you over time. They've remembered enough about you to anticipate what you need. Think about what that means. Your dog isn't just remembering that you exist. They're remembering who you are. Your moods, your patterns, your rhythms, what makes you calm, what makes you anxious. They've been building a portrait of you since the day you brought them home. Every walk, every morning, every quiet evening on the couch. It's all in there. Have you ever come home after a genuinely terrible day and had your dog behave differently towards you? Softer, closer, more attentive? Before you said a word to anyone? I want you to think about that moment. Tell me in the comments if that's happened to you. Because that's not coincidence. That's your dog reading a file they've been building for years, which brings me to something that I think is the most emotionally important finding in all of this research, and I want to be careful with how I say it. Because I've sat across from owners who lost dogs to illness and who spent months wondering if the dog knew how loved they were. If the time together had mattered, if any of it was retained, the answer, as best we can determine, is yes. Resoundingly, yes. There's a concept researchers use called secure base effect. It was originally used to describe the attachment between human infants and caregivers. Psychologists found that a securely attached infant uses the caregiver as a base. They'll explore a room freely when the caregiver is present and become distressed when the caregiver leaves. In 2013, a team of researchers applied this exact framework to dogs and their owners. They found the same pattern. Dogs showed markedly more exploratory behavior with their owner present than with a stranger, and showed distress responses on separation that mirrored infant attachment. The dog doesn't just remember you. They're oriented around you. You are their secure base. You are the fixed point their world is organized around. 22 years of watching animals, and I still find that extraordinary. I want to go back to Hazel for a moment, because I promised I would. Her blood work came back largely unremarkable. Some mild indicators of early cognitive aging, nothing alarming. What I told her owner was this: Hazel is not confused about who you are. She knows. She has always known. What she's experiencing is a slowdown. Slower processing, slower motor response, longer warm-up time. But the file is intact. You are in there. The owner looked at me for a moment and then said, "Why didn't anyone tell me this sooner?" I hear some version of that question more than almost any other. And it's part of why I keep doing this. Keep sitting down to explain what the research is actually showing, what I've actually seen, because these things matter. The relationship between a person and their dog is one of the most consequential relationships in many people's lives. It deserves accurate information. It deserves weight. 3 months later, she sent me a note. Hazel was doing well on a protocol we adjusted together. But more than that, she wrote that understanding what Hazel actually remembered had changed how she moved through the house with her. More intentionally, more present. I realized she's been paying attention to all of it, she wrote. So I started paying attention too. So let me bring this together. Your dog's memory is not a simple on-off switch. It's a layered system. The scent-based memory is the most durable. Your smell is your dog's most persistent and emotionally charged representation of you, and it doesn't fade quickly. The episodic-like memory shows your dog is capable of storing and recalling specific experiences, not just trained responses, but actual remembered events. The emotional memory means your dog has been building a model of you, your moods, your rhythms, your patterns, over the entire course of your life together. And the attachment research shows that you are not just a person your dog remembers. You are the person their entire world is calibrated around. Different mechanisms, different parts of the brain, all pointing at the same conclusion. Your dog knows you in a way that is deep, durable, and remarkably specific to who you actually are. If there's one thing I want you to do after this, it's simple. Tonight, when you get home, Give your dog 30 seconds before you do anything else. Before you put down your bag, before you check your phone, 30 seconds of deliberate contact. Because that moment is not just comfort for them. It's a deposit into something they're actually keeping. The file gets updated, the portrait gets sharper, and if someone in your life has a dog, especially someone who's ever worried whether their dog still knows them, whether the time apart hurt the relationship, send them this. That's all I ask. Everything I've shared today reflects current veterinary and behavioral research alongside my clinical experience. It is not a replacement for individual veterinary care. If your dog is showing signs of cognitive decline, disorientation, changes in sleep, or significant behavioral shifts, please talk to your vet. There are real medical causes for those changes that deserve real evaluation. Your vet is your partner in this, and your dog deserves that conversation.